So now we're delighted to welcome Dr. Nicole Voet, who is going to talk to us about improving quality of life in FSHD, exercise, fatigue and pain management through personalised, patient-centred rehabilitation. A few words about Nicole. She is a rehabilitation physician and senior researcher at Klimendal Rehabilitation Centre and Radboud University Medical Centre's Muscle Centre in the Netherlands. Her thesis showed that exercise can slow FSHD progression. As a translational researcher, she focuses on improving social participation in neuromuscular disorders, especially FSHD, and studies muscle, fatigue, and pain. She founded INSPIRE, an international consortium on psychological interventions in neuromuscular disease, and chairs the Dutch National Neuromuscular Care Network. She's widely recognized as an expert in FSHD, fatigue, mental well-being, and physical training, and she aims to produce meaningful, directly applicable research results. So we're really looking forward to hearing your input, Nicole. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the introduction. And now I will share my presentation. Let's see. One moment. Can you see my presentation now?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Then I will start. And I will start with my main message, because when talking about exercise in FSHD, in order to decrease fatigue and pain, it's important to start low and go slow. And I will tell you why. And I have some other take-home messages. First, so start low and go slow. Then one size doesn't fit all. It's about personalized exercise, a personalized approach. The context matters. Training is more than just exercise, or in other words, when I prescribe training, I do not only look into training, but also into daily life. And the last one is, we always say that you have to listen to your body, but I will show you why you have to listen proactively to your body. And this is FSHD from a medical perspective. And you can see it's a bit difficult. Difficult words, scheme, stress apoptosis, etc. So this is how we look at FSHD from a medical perspective. But when we ask you as patients to look at FSHD from a patient perspective, then it's different, because then it's about the burden of disease, the consequences of the disease. And of course, it's about muscle weakness. The things on my previous slide were also the causes of muscle weakness. But there is more, because more than 60% of patients experience fatigue, almost 80% experience pain. Sleep disturbances are very common because of pain and fatigue. And with all these factors, it's of course difficult, also with muscle weakness, to be physical active. So that's the burden of disease, and it's different from the things I showed you in the previous slide. But as a rehabilitation physician, I focus on these factors. And you can see these are multidimensional problems. So it can also differ from person to person. And here you can see the determinants of health in people all over the world. It's a big research with a lot of data, which shows you the different determinants of health, or in other words, which factors determine health in people. And the first one is medical care, but that's only in 11% a determinant of health. Or in other words, we as physicians are not so important. We only determine 11% of your health. In 22% in general, it's about genetics and biology. And FSHD is a heritable disease. So it's a very important aspect of the disease. But we know in FSHD that if, for example, your father or your mother has FSHD, and his or her complaints are most of the time not the same as your complaints. So you can see that it's only 22% And I think that there's no more heterogeneous disease than FSHD, or in other words, there's a lot of difference between persons in one family regarding the consequences of disease. In 7%, it's about the environment, so environmental factors. At 24%, social circumstances, so if you can get help, social support. And here is the most important factor. It's about individual behavior. That's in 36% a determinant of health. But it's also good to know, and this is about lifestyle, coping, etc., that if you have a lot of muscle weakness, then it's not your fault because there are a lot of factors that determine your health. And FSHD is an epigenetic disease. So what is epigenetic? It's a bit of a difficult term, but genetic means it's in your DNA. So FSHD is heritable. If your father or your mother has FSHD, then at least in FSHD type 1, there's a risk of 1 in 2 that you have FSHD too. But epigenetic is different because epigenetic are several factors that determine the effect of DNA. And DNA determines the production of proteins, and proteins have a lot of effect on your body, on your complaints. So the factors I showed you before, a lot of them are also epigenetic factors like environmental factors, but also mental stress, physical activity, exercise, food. They all have consequences for the production of proteins for your DNA, especially in FSHD, because we know that FSHD is an epigenetic disease. And now let's turn to fatigue, because I told you that more than 60% of patients, unfortunately, experience fatigue. Here is a definition of fatigue, but don't remember it, maybe don't even read it. But what I want to show you is that this author tried to determine or define fatigue. But fatigue is a very difficult complaint because it has a lot of dimensions, a lot of causes. It's different from one person to the other. You have chronic fatigue, acute fatigue, mental fatigue, physical fatigue. So it's a very complex phenomenon with a lot of causes. And here is one important cause in FSHD, because here you can see 100% capacity for doing things in daily life. And we all have 100% capacity, relatively, but absolutely it's different in people without FSHD and people with FSHD. Because we all have relatively a natural reserve up till 60% of our maximum, and in that natural reserve we can do everything we want for hours without any problem. But if it's something that is above 60% of our maximum, then compensation is needed to do things in another way or to use other muscles. And then, for example, you can do only 30 minutes of an activity. And then above 80%, there's a loss of function. You cannot do things anymore or relatively short, only for minutes. And for FSHD patients, it's the same. But there's a difference because you can see that the green block is smaller. Or in other words, for example, and also the orange block is smaller. For example, if you want to vacuum clean your house, then for people without FSHD, it's in their natural reserve. They can vacuum clean their house for hours. I wouldn't recommend it, but in theory, it's possible. But if you have FSHD, then maybe it's in your 70% of your maximum, and then you can do it only for a couple of minutes, or you're not able to do it. So there's a difference in your capacity for doing things in daily life. And there's another thing that's about fatigability, because you can experience fatigue, but fatigability is about the increase of fatigue when you are doing things in daily life. And you can see here 3 lines, a red one, a green one, and a blue one. And on the vertical axis, you can see the level of fatigue. So the higher the fatigue. And on the horizontal axis, you can see the work of activity in duration, intensity, energy expenditure. So the more to the right, the higher the work of activity. And the blue line is, for example, for top sporters who have a very low fatigability, or in other words, if they are active in daily life or performing exercise, they can do a lot of things without a high level of fatigue. Then there is the green line for people without FSHD, and then there's the red line for people with FSHD, with a very high level of fatigability. And as a consequence, you can see that the work of activity is less and limited. So you can do less in daily life because when you're doing things, there is a high increase of fatigue. But of course, you want to do the same things as everyone else. You want to listen to this presentation. You want to take the kids with your car to do their sports and exercises, etc. So you want to cope with everyone else. But then with your high level of fatigability, the fatigue will build up, especially because the amount of rest is limited, because you need more time to perform your activities, so the time left to rest is limited. And then that's the red line, your fatigue will build up, and then you are at risk for chronic fatigue. If you sometimes are vacuum cleaning your house for 1 hour and you experience fatigue, then that's no problem. But if you do it every day, every week, then the fatigue will build up. And then you are at risk for chronic fatigue. So be aware, you need enough rest in between your activities. So I showed you the risk of acute fatigue becoming chronic fatigue, but what's the difference between acute fatigue on the one hand and chronic fatigue on the other hand? Acute fatigue, as the name already implies, is of short duration. It's tiredness that comes right after doing something. For example, after exercise or after vacuum cleaning, so you can explain the level and the intensity of the fatigue. And it doesn't last long, it goes away. Usually goes away when you rest. Chronic fatigue, on the other hand, means if you experience chronic fatigue, we always say if you experience fatigue for 3 months or longer, then you experience chronic fatigue. And that means you get tired very quickly, even with small activities, and the tiredness even feels heavier and stronger. And you may want to avoid making any effort. And this is an important one because sometimes you may ask yourself, do I experience acute fatigue or chronic fatigue? And an important question which you can question yourself is there a correlation between the things you are doing and the amount of fatigue you experience? And if you're saying to me, I am fatigued, but I don't know why, there is no correlation anymore, then be aware, because then you are experiencing chronic fatigue. And that's negative because there is no sense of control anymore, because there's no correlation between the things you are doing and the fatigue you are experiencing. So you don't have any control on your fatigue. And another important characteristic is that rest or sleep doesn't really help. So there's nothing to do, you think, but I will tell you what you can do. And most of the time, it's a multidimensional problem. It's a mix of physical fatigue, mental fatigue, and emotional fatigue. So acute fatigue is not a problem, but it can build up to chronic fatigue. And chronic fatigue is not a very positive feeling. When you experience fatigue after exercise, that's maybe a feeling of, oh, I'm doing something. That's not always a negative feeling. So another important things to know about acute fatigue becoming chronic fatigue are the 3 Ps. The first one is the precipitating factor, a trigger. For example, a trauma, an accident, or you are ill, or there's something in your family. So there's one point in time that acute fatigue becomes chronic fatigue. And then there are predisposing factors or vulnerabilities. Some people are more prone to become chronic fatigue. And FSHD, unfortunately, is a predisposing factor. But we cannot do anything about something in the past, which has happened. And unfortunately, maybe in the future, hopefully, but we cannot do anything now about curing FSHD. So the third Third factor is the most important factor because we can do anything. We can do something about a perpetuating factor. Perpetuating factors are the maintainers of chronic fatigue, or in other words, they cause the fatigue to not go away. And here you can see the result of research from the Radboud University Medical Center in already 2007 in FSHD. And you can see in the middle fatigue, chronic fatigue. And as you can see, there is no line between muscle weakness and fatigue. Or in other words, there is no correlation between muscle weakness and fatigue. It's not the case that the higher the muscle weakness, the higher the fatigue, or the other way around. In my consulting room, I see it most of the time the other way around. People with a limited level of muscle fatigue, muscle weakness, are trying to cope with their family and friends, and therefore having a high level of fatigue. But there is a correlation between physical inactivity and fatigue. And also the other way around. If there is overuse, it can cause fatigue. The second most perpetuating factor is pain. And the third most important factor are sleep disturbances. And in the right upper corner, you can see that fatigue and physical inactivity can lead to a lower level of social participation. So what we wanted to do is to break this vicious circle, because it's a vicious circle. Muscle weakness leads to physical inactivity, which leads to fatigue. And of course, with fatigue, it's very difficult to be physical active. I've told you something about physical activity, about exercise, but what's the difference? Physical activity is any movement of your body that uses your muscles and makes you spend more energy than when you're resting. For example, walking, gardening, climbing stairs. But be aware that for you, as an FSHD patient, walking, gardening, climbing stairs can be exercise too. And exercise is a special kind of physical activity. It's planned, structured, and repeated regularly with the goal of getting fitter or staying fit. Jogging, cycling, swimming, or doing gym workouts. But these are the definitions for people without FSHD. And I always say to my patients, you can see the difference because when you're physical active, your heart rate increases, but your breathing rate remains the same. But if you're exercising, your heart rate increases and your breathing rate increases. So then you can make a distinction between physical activity and exercise. So now let's turn back to acute fatigue becomes chronic fatigue and breaking the vicious circle. Breaking the vicious circle was a main part of my PhD project. What I did is I performed a randomized controlled clinical trial in 76 patients with FSHD in the Netherlands. And there was one group who didn't receive any therapy, which is called the control group. There was one group of patients who received cognitive behavioral therapy, and I will tell you later on what cognitive behavioral therapy is, 16 weeks. And there was a group who received 16 weeks of cycling exercises. And both were very, very positive because both showed an effect on experience fatigue. People didn't experience any fatigue anymore. People experienced a higher level of social participation, an increase of physical activity, an increase of sleep quality, and very important, a deceleration of the progression of the disease. We also performed MRI measurements, and we saw a deceleration of the fatty infiltration of the muscles. And more importantly, only 2.3 patients, or to be short, only 2 patients have to follow cognitive behavioral therapy to cure one patient of his or her fatigue. And only a little bit more than 1 patient has to exercise to cure one patient of his or her fatigue. And these numbers are very low because, for example, for medication, pain medication, other medication, these numbers are very, very much higher. So it's a very effective therapy for all patients. And when I called my participants years later after the trial, then almost 80% of the participants said to me that they continued exercising because they felt that it has a very positive effect. So, but what is cognitive behavioral therapy? Cognitive behavioral therapy is a psychological therapy given by a psychologist. And only 2 to 3 sessions were needed in my study to cure patients from fatigue. And there are different modules which were focused on the model I showed you before. The psychologist, if needed, tells you or learns you how to cope with your disease in daily life, to change, if needed, dysfunctional cognitions. For example, I am fatigued, but I cannot do anything about it. I cannot be active, or to change the catastrophizing in daily life. Deregulation of sleep. We told the patients to wake up at the same time every day and go bed at the same time, so a structured sleep and wake times, and not sleep during the day. And that was maybe the most difficult module in the trial, but it helped patients to sleep better at night if they didn't sleep during the day. And then a deregulation of activity. We learned our patients to be active every day the same. So not one day very active and the day after very fatigued and not active. Then you're looking like this, but a regulation, a structured level of activity, and then a slow buildup of activity. And also the partner was invited to the therapy if there was low social support, or maybe too high social support, or if there were any negative social interactions. And as I told you before, in the MRI measurements, we saw in the people in the control group who didn't receive any therapy that there was an increase of 6% of fatty infiltration in their muscles. So that's the cause of muscle weakness, fatty infiltration in their upper leg muscles in a year. And after exercise, it was only 2.5%, and after cognitive behavioral therapy, only 2%. So very effective also in decelerating the disease. And I think why it is so effective, I think that exercise is an epigenetic factor. We know it's an epigenetic factor in people without FSHD, and maybe it's the case in people with FSHD too. And as I told you, it controls genes. It influences how our body reads the genetic instructions and whether certain proteins are made. Maybe also the DUX4, the toxic protein in FSHD. And as I said to you before, it's everywhere. It's in food, quality of sleep, exercise, so also the components of the cognitive behavioral therapy. It's also the reason why we differ from each other. Even twins can differ, and that's because of epigenetic factors. And we know in people without FSHD that when you exercise, you can change methylation, and methylation is also involved in FSHD. And in people without FSHD, it helps muscles to repair, to grow, and to develop more endurance muscle fibers, so you can be active for a longer time. And as I said before, FSHD is an epigenetic disease. And you can see in the right, it was the front cover, an image on the front cover of my PhD thesis. It's DNA with methylation, the circles, and I have put bicycles onto the DNA as a kind of an epigenetic factor. So our big wish is to perform the study again and to take a look at epigenetic factors. But there's the negative thing about epigenetic research is that we have to take a muscle biopsy, which is not a very, it can be painful for patients. So that's a disadvantage. And what I like about the Radboud University Medical Center is that we apply reverse engineering. Because most of the time we start, for example, when developing medication at the DNA level, and then at the muscle cell level, muscle tissue, and then sometimes perform research in animals with a muscle disease, and sometimes exercise studies in animals, or clinical studies in animals. And then we try to develop medication for patients. It's like this way. But I, as a rehabilitation physician, and also in the Radboud University Medical Center, we do it the other way around, because we learn from patients how they cope with the disease, what are positive things, negative things. So we learned from the model that exercise and cognitive behavioral therapy are effective interventions, even with an effect on the muscular level. So maybe it can also help in developing medication to see why are these exercise rehabilitation interventions so effective. And my colleague, Basile van Engelen, maybe you know him because he's a very famous neurologist in FSHD. He was my PhD supervisor and he still is my mentor. He said it's back translation. It's a kind of Sherlock Holmes forensic approach because Sherlock Holmes also applied reverse engineering when someone was killed. And he said, Sherlock Holmes, in solving a problem of this sort, someone is killed, the grand thing is to be able to reason backwards. And that's a very useful accomplishment and a very easy one, but people do not practice it much. And I think in my research, it's very easy because I see a lot of patients who are doing very well. And I can learn from them and help other people with that approach. So I've told you about my PhD research. And till a couple of years ago, we focused on the effect of exercise and rehabilitation interventions. But then I saw a lot of patients who still experience side effects and even adverse effects of exercise. So what is the difference between these two? Side effects are mild and temporary, a bit like the acute fatigue, for example, muscle soreness, but be aware in FSHD it can be more pronounced and longer than in people without FSHD after exercise. It can appear more quickly. And it's, for example, an increased heart rate, shortness of breath, the acute fatigue. And it's no problem, at least when you take enough rest. But side effects can become adverse effects in NMD and FSHD when the recovery time is not taken into account, when the exercise selection is not very well. Oh, it goes too fast. Oh, now I'm going too fast. Yes. When the contextual factors need a lot of energy or when the exercise intensity is too high. And I will tell you more about these important factors. First, this is research from the Stanford University in the United States. And they performed exercise tests in people with neuromuscular disease, including patients with FSHD. And they showed in their research that people with NMD, including FSHD, that their recovery time from exercise is compromised and he wants to go very fast, and that they need more time for recovery. So that's a problem that you have to take into account after exercise. And I always say that my patients are top sporters in daily life. Because as I showed you before, the relative capacity, everything you're doing is top sport for you. And these are top sporters in daily life too, cyclists of the Tour de France. But as you can see, they don't have to drive their own car, they do not have to cook their own dinner, do not have to make their own bed. And one of my patients said, I do not win a gold medal. So I ask you to exercise above all your daily life exercises. And that we have to take into account above the fact that you need more rest to recover. So that's a bit of a puzzle. So how to measure and how to prescribe the right amount of exercise intensity. The gold standard, so the way to measure exercise capacity and to prescribe exercise intensity, is a maximal cycling exercise test. So you cycle on a bike with an increasing intensity up till the point that you're not able to cycle anymore. And then you get a number for your aerobic capacity. But the problem is that it's a kind of a sum for your muscles, your mitochondria, your heart, and your lungs. And in FSHD, we want to focus on the muscle. So what we did in our research is focusing on the muscle during our measurements of aerobic capacity. So what we did, we performed cycling tests in the way that we performed then in people without FSHD, but we also measured muscle fatigue with EMG. And with EMG, we can measure the activity from the brain through the spinal cord, through the muscle. And what we saw in these measurements was, as expected, that the level of muscle fatigue and the amount of muscle fatigue is faster and higher in people with muscle disease, including it's running itself, including people with FSHD, than in healthy people. So muscles give up earlier than your heart and lungs do. And this can help us tailor training and daily activities better because we want to avoid overuse or undertraining. So normally when we prescribe exercise, we say start at 50% of your maximum. But then a lot of people, especially the people who are experience a high level of muscle fatigue and a high level of muscle weakness, are already beyond the threshold of muscle fatigue, which leads to overuse. So then I said, knowing this, start low and go slow. When starting exercise, start at 30% because then there is no muscle fatigue yet. And then you can build up very, very slowly with small steps. And we hope with this approach that we can increase the level of muscle fatigue, the threshold for muscle fatigue. And in my experience, it's helping a lot because a lot of people who are not able to exercise are now able to exercise, at least when they start low and go slow. But this is not new because in Japan, it's known for years. It's called Kaizen. Kaizen means taking small steps. And there is another advantage because when you want to exercise, you change your lifestyle. And that's changing behavior. And your brain doesn't like change of behavior. And your brain prevents you from changing behavior. But when you are taking small steps, your brain doesn't detect it as a change of behavior. So your brain is a bit of sleeping. And for example, when you want to perform biceps curls to make your biceps more powerful, you can start with only one biceps curl every week. And then the week after, 2 times one biceps curl every week, and then taking small steps. And your brain doesn't detect it as a change of behavior. And when you build up very slowly, you are maybe in the end at 3 times 10 biceps curls. And then your brain wakes up and thinks, oh, let her go. So it also helps in changing behavior because small steps are more doable in daily life. And I told you about biceps curls, and biceps curls is a kind of strength training because in my PhD research, I did research on aerobic training, cycling, but another example is swimming or walking. And another form of training is strength training, which can help your muscles being powerful, strong. And we as physicians, researchers, healthcare professionals, we're very afraid of strength training in FSHD because FSHD is a muscle disease. So we were afraid that strength training can damage the muscles. But I saw a lot of patients in my consulting room who were performing strength training very successfully and they liked strength training. So then as a Sherlock Holmes, I thought, why can we not learn from these patients? So ask them, how are you performing your strength training so we can learn from them? And we did. We performed qualitative research, or in other words, we interviewed these people who performed strength training successfully, and we interviewed people with FSHD who performed strength training and did not succeed in performing strength training. And I show you what we've learned from them. 5 important pillars for successful strength training. First, to have balance in their daily life. So if there is no balance, or in other words, you are performing more activities than what's good for you, or less activities than what's good for you, then you will not be successful in strength training. It's a prerequisite for strength training to have balance in your daily life. And sometimes when a patient asks me, I want to start with training, strength training, then I first start with prescribing occupational therapy to create balance in daily life. Or, for example, there is a young woman who had a baby recently and asked me, she wants to perform training, but I said there is no balance in your daily life because you do not sleep well because of the baby. So I advised her to not start with strength training because there is no balance, and be aware that having a little baby is already strength training, caring for your baby. That's the exercise in daily life. Then the second most important factor is to have a sustaining factor, because you have to exercise chronically to have an effect. So it's helpful to have a partner or a friend who is going with you, or a physical therapist or coach, something that keeps you training chronically. Then the third one, a very, very important one, to have a sense of control. So you have control on the things you are doing in your training. And what we learned from patients is that there are two groups. There is one group of FSHD patients who said, I want to prescribe my training myself, and to build up my training myself, and to decide when to perform my strength training, but with good education from a healthcare professional. And there is a group who has less self-confidence and want to have a physical therapist or a coach who coaches them. But the unsuccessful group, there was a mismatch. The people who want to have a lot of control themselves had a physical therapist or coach who was telling them what to do. And the group who has less self-confidence had no physical therapist or coach. So if you want to start exercising, be aware of to which group do you belong, and do you want a physical therapist or a coach who guides you, or do you want it yourself with good education? Then the fourth one is daily life. It's not about exercise alone. It's about healthy food, a good night of sleep. It's all needed to have effect of your training. And that's what we see in top sport too. There are now psychologists in top sport, dietitians, because it's not only about the exercise. And the last one is that it has to be personalized. When one of my patients wants to exercise, my first question is, did you exercise before? What do you like? What's the goal? So to match, and do you want supervision or not, to match the training and the form of training with the person. Then some words on fatigue regarding to training, because there is on the one hand central fatigue, and on the other hand physical or peripheral fatigue. And central fatigue, you do not want central fatigue, because central fatigue, it's in your brain, and your brain is needed because your brain has to send signals, messages to your muscles to be active. But when your brain is a bit tired, then he sends weaker signals to your muscles, and then you cannot exercise very well. It's like your brain saying, let's slow down. And this can happen due to a lack of sleep, to stress, or long-lasting effort. So you have to prevent central fatigue, because otherwise your training is not very successful. It prevents you from getting stronger. What you do want is peripheral fatigue, a little bit of fatigue inside your muscles. So they will be as strong as they are, because being or having the same muscle strength is very helpful, or a little bit of increase of muscle strength. And that happens when your muscles run a bit low on energy or build up waste during exercise, like lactic acid. And you can feel it because you're a little bit of a slower moving, and a little bit of pain is okay, but not too much, and not more than 24 hours. And when you're exercising, you still have to be able to do daily activities. When you're exercising and afterwards you cannot walk anymore or cannot do the groceries, then it's too intensive. And that helps you getting stronger. And here's something about compensation. That's also very important to prevent. You can see now a video on the left-hand side. These are marathon runners in a marathon. And you can see they are walking the stairs not very well, because there is lactic acid in their muscles and it's painful. That's central fatigue. The brain doesn't want them to walk the stairs in the right way, because the muscles are very, very fatigued. And you can see they move differently, and that's compensation. Because on the right-hand side, there is overuse of a muscle, and then the brain activates other muscles to be active, compensation. And then it leads to a movement change. And that can also lead to pain, because if you walk in a different way for a very long time, then it can lead to pain in your joints, for example. So it's very important to prevent overuse. When you are active and too intensive, or your exercise intensity is too high, then your brain detects it, and your brain takes care of your muscles with a higher amount of muscle weakness. So your brain limits the signals to your weak muscles and increases the signals to your relatively more strong muscles. And that has two negative consequences. The weak muscles become inactive and can be less powerful in weeks or months. And the relatively more strong muscles are too active and are experiencing pain in the long term. And therefore, it's so important to be active, but not with a too high intensity or too long duration. Here, another example of fatigue, which you can see in a muscle. On the left-hand side, a perfect technique, so not a very high level of muscle fatigue, at least at that time in the competition. And at the right-hand side, two brothers in a triathlon competition. The left brother on the left-hand side does not experience a very high number of fatigue. And the brother on the right-hand side is leaning backward. You can see it in his face, he has experienced fatigue. So when you are performing your activity, you can see it when you are fatigued. Your partner can see it when you're walking, or your coach or your physical therapist. It's very important to look at the technique during your exercises. So what we, of course, wanted to do is to perform measurements again during cycling and take a look at the technique and the way of movement. And what we see indeed is that the brain is very, very important, because when exercising at a high intensity, the main muscle, the upper leg muscle, starts to get tired. The brain activates a stronger muscle, which takes over to help you change the way you move. And after a while, even the helper muscle gets tired, and that we measure with EMG. So that's the way we now measure muscle fatigue in our lab. But of course, walking is very important for daily life too. So last year we performed measurements during walking also in patients with FSHD, again with motion analysis. So the way you move, we can make a stick figure like you see in the figure. And again with the EMG measurements, the muscle activity, and we ask our patients to score their level of fatigue on a scale from 0 to 10. 0 is not tired at all, and 10 is very, very tired. Because we wanted to find out when people feel their level of fatigue, and if it matches with their objective level of fatigue as measured with motion analysis and EMG. So we measured 11 people during walking on a treadmill, and we asked them every 2 minutes, how tired are you now? And what did we discover? We discovered that when we measured muscle fatigue, in the way that they changed their way of walking, then they didn't feel tired. Minutes after that, they felt tired. So they are a little bit beyond the level of muscle fatigue. And we saw a lot of changes in how they move, how they lift their feet, use their knees, activate their core muscles. And only at a tiredness score of 5, the movement patterns clearly changed. This means that you are feeling tired, that you are already tired in your muscles without knowing it. And you can see here, it's a difficult graph, but what I want to show you, it's all the different compensation mechanisms. So the change in movement, it was different for everyone. There was only one common mechanism, and that was ankle dorsiflexion, or in other words, you lift your foot higher when you're tired, and that's to prevent tripping. So we always say as physicians to our patients, you have to listen to your body, but be aware that when you are feeling fatigue, your body is already fatigued. But if you have a good sense of body feeling, that helps you in coping in daily life and being active and exercising in daily life. And we will also perform measurements in people without NMD in a couple of months. My hypothesis is that in especially top sporters, they have a very good bodily feeling. So when they are feeling fatigue, their body is fatigued. So there's a higher correlation. And I said to you before that sometimes acute fatigue is no problem, but you do not have to build it up. So for example, when you want a day to the zoo, that's okay. That's a very tireful day, very fatiguing day. But it's okay when you do it once a month or maybe at a maximum once in 2 weeks, but not every day. So sometimes life is a competition, and then it's okay to feel tired, but not every day. Every day is training with a very good level of exercise intensity, but not every day. Life is not a competition in order to prevent chronic fatigue and pain. Last year, I gave a presentation together with a patient. He has congenital myopathy, so another form of a muscle disease, but he has learned me a lot because he was able to increase his walking distance on his own from 100 meters to 10 kilometers. So, like Sherlock Holmes, I asked him, how did you succeed? And he learned me a lot. He said that it's important to know, are you motivated or not? Some people are not motivated for exercise. They do not like exercise. And then in that case, you need discipline. Exercise at the same day in the week, going with a friend, having a physical therapist. So are you motivated or not? And if not, you need discipline. He also said, I'm an idiot, but I'm not stupid. A lot of people said, you're an idiot from 100 meters to 10 kilometers. But he is doing it in a safe way, so he's not stupid. And he said, sometimes I compensate in daily life. So I use other muscles in the shower to comb my hair, but not during exercise. During exercise, you have to move in the right way. And he said, training is like trading stocks. He is training with a high risk and high reward, so he has to be aware for the high risk. But if you do not like high risk, then you have a more cautious approach with starting slow and building up slowly. And very important, compare yourself only to yourself and not to others, because he said, I was very successfully, I can walk 10 kilometers, but then an elderly woman walked faster than I did. But he said, no, don't look at that elderly woman. I have to compare myself only to myself, not to others. And I showed you before in all the different compensation mechanisms, one size doesn't fit all. So every exercise scheme is different, but there are some advices, general advices that I told you in my presentation. And be aware, I am a rehabilitation physician since 2016, but you know your body already for maybe 20, 30, 40, 60 years. So you have a lot of experience and knowledge too. And it's important to connect my knowledge as a physician and a researcher with your knowledge as patients in the Sherlock Holmes method. The last one is that I want to say to you is not be afraid using aids like orthosis or arm support. A lot of my patients are afraid that when they use aids like arm support, like this boy with Duchenne, that their arm muscles will become lazy, but it's the other way around. Because on the upper graph, you can see that the boy, when he is not using arm support, he can use his arm only for 100 seconds with a high level of fatigue. But when he uses arm support, he can use his arms for more than 400 seconds with a low level of fatigue, which means that all his muscles are exercising in the right way with a low number of fatigue. So don't be afraid that aids make you lazy. When prescribed in the right way, they help you moving in the right way and preventing pain. I also showed you that you cannot feel your muscle fatigue very well at the right time. So in other words, you're driving a car without a very well dashboard. And at least in the Netherlands, when we drive in a car without a dashboard, we are taking off the road. So my aim for my future research, and we are now also preparing that research, is to develop a kind of a muscle watch. So not a heart rate watch, but a muscle watch connected with a sensor to, I think, your core muscles, your trunk, which can detect your level of muscle fatigue and which, for example, bleeps when you are experiencing muscle fatigue, so that it can help you in daily life performing your activities, your exercises in the right way with no adverse effects. So to end, When exercising, start low and go slow to prevent pain and chronic fatigue from exercise. One size doesn't fit all, so be aware, do you want to have guidance or not? What's your goal of exercise? What do you like? It's better to perform exercise you like, which is not the most effective exercise, than performing exercise which is in theory the most effective exercise, but what you don't like. Context matters. It's also about healthy food, having a good night of sleep, having balance in daily life. And the last one, be aware that you have to listen proactively to your body. So thank you very much. And I'm very curious if there are any questions.
Nicole, thank you so much. That was such a rich presentation. Lots of questions bubbled up while you were speaking, and then you duly went on and answered them. So I would like to invite people to ask questions. I can see that Una would like to ask a question. Would you like to ask your question, Una? And there are other ones coming in as well.
I don't know if Una was clapping, Maeve.
Oh, I'm sorry, they were clapping. I beg your pardon. Thank you, Una. So, do we have any questions currently?
Pauline, you've raised your hand there, I think.
Okay. Can you hear me now? That was really interesting, and there's a lot to take in. But I am a bit concerned that there was no mention of needing to have proper supervision and advice when people are embarking on exercise. And I suppose I'm speaking from my own personal experience that because I didn't know I'd got FSHD and I was doing the gym and swimming and Pilates, and I was getting decreasingly able to do anything and getting pain. And it was that sent me to the doctor eventually, and what then ended up with this diagnosis of FSHD. So it's not just about going to a gym and having a trainer. I think you need somebody who has adequate advice about the condition to be able to encourage you to do it safely. Because although I thought, I mean, you think Pilates is quite safe and not invasive, but in fact, I was doing myself so much damage that I put myself on this treadmill much sooner than I needed to. Does that make sense?
Thank you very much for that very helpful addition. I didn't say indeed that you cannot exercise yourself. You need guidance from a physician or a therapist with expertise in muscle disease, FSHD. You can exercise yourself, but you have to start at least with advice from your physician and and a physiotherapist to start in the right way with the right exercises. For example, Pilates is can be very well form of exercise, but it asks a lot of, for example, your balance. So it can be too demanding for your muscles indeed. And when you have your advice from your physical therapist and physician, and some people exercise on their own, but be aware that just like you experience that when you are not able to exercise or you experience pain and fatigue or you're not able to perform your exercises in the way you did before, then go back to your physician or physical therapist and say, can you take a look what's happening? Because unfortunately, FSHD can be a progressive disease. So sometimes it's needed to change your exercise protocol and to do other exercises or with a lower level of intensity or repetitions in order to match the exercise intensity with the amount of muscle strength. And I give presentations all over the world, and I think that in the Netherlands we are very happy that we have the FSHD Expert Center. People from all over the Netherlands can come to us for advice, and we have a network of physicians and therapists all over the country. And sometimes it's difficult to get advice on exercise and physical activity, And therefore, I also have a website and podcast with education on exercise in FSHD and NMD. And we are also now writing a book about muscle strength and exercise in neuromuscular disease. So I can keep you updated on that book. It will also be translated into to English. But thank you very much for the additional remark that it's don't try this at home yourself. You have to have the right advice, know the amount of muscle strength you have to match the right exercise. Okay.
Thank you, Nicole. Pauline, are you okay with that answer? Do you want to come back about anything? You're okay, thank you. And it may also be of interest to practitioners in Ireland. I think maybe some people speaking will echo that as well, that idea of practitioners having more knowledge and awareness about how to support people living with FSHD in Eoghan. Eoghan, would you like to, you have your hand up there.
Yeah, no, it's just sorry. I know a lot of you know me already. Even like Eoghan, but Nicole, I had the fixation done in 2012, but I got back strength and conditioning for about 4 years, and it was the best thing I ever did because I went to a specific gym. I did personal training, and then they moved me downstairs into a regulated environment where they adapted all the exercises for my condition. And but on the other side of the flip side, when we go into the hospitals over here, our physios are advising completely differently about exercise. And just from learning from Newcastle and Amsterdam conferences, exercise is one of the key most things. I had nearly reversed my FSHD type 2 and of learning my arm, relearning to use that. Then unfortunately I had an accident. That's left me in a whole other pile of stuff. But I know that works through. And I did that 3 to 4 times a week, 45-minute sessions. But diet, other supplements, things like that were hugely important. So I just want to say I completely agree with you on that one.
Thank you. Thank you. So nice that you experienced positive effect of exercise. Yeah.
Thank you, Eoghan. Alan, you have your hand up?
Yeah, thank you, Nicole. That was a great presentation, very informative. Just quick query, just in relation to the study you did on the muscular skeletal support and the aids. I'm just wondering, was that over, what time period was that over? And I'm just wondering, over a longer period of time, would you perceive the results to still be the same, that it supports improved muscle as against weakening?
Yeah, we performed measurements only in a short period of time. So boys were lifting cans on a table, and then we measured the amount of muscle fatigue. So we didn't measure the effect of arm support for a longer period of time, because that's not very ethical, for example, to prescribe one boy arm support and one boy not, and to take a look at the difference. But from my experience in my consulting room is that aids can help a lot in preventing pain. But last week I had a patient in my consulting room who said, I have a very positive effect of my leg orthosis, but my other leg is now very painful. But it appeared that I prescribe a leg orthosis. So arthrosis is an aid which can help you lift up your foot when you are experiencing a foot drop. So there's a risk of tripping. And when you have a foot drop, you have to lift up your leg higher in order to not trip. So it's costs a lot of energy walking. But it appeared that because with the orthosis, he can walk more easily. Before he get the orthosis, he walked 1 kilometer. And after the orthosis, 2 kilometers. And I said to him, you have your orthosis on your right leg. So your right leg is okay now. But your left leg, you ask your left leg to walk 2 kilometers now. So 1 kilometer more than before. So be aware that when you get an orthosis, also start slow and build up slowly, because other muscles have to go with you in increasing your walking distance. So I've learned from him how to build up with an orthosis.
Great, thank you, Nicole.
Thank you, Eoghan, and thank you, Alan, and thank you, Nicole. Una McCourt. I know we have two Unas, but Una McCourt has a question.
Oh, you're muted still.
Sorry. I just want to say thank you for the presentation. It was brilliant, and it's so amazing to hear that type of information. And actually, when my husband was diagnosed, one of your papers was one of the first papers that I found to, you know, guide us into the direction of we can do exercise and so on. And I guess, you know, and I know you mentioned that you have a website and so on. What I would really like is, and I guess this is a bit for MDI and a bit for us, if something that we can hand to the physicians or the physical therapists that, you know, this community works with, so that they can have that level of understanding of that fine balance that is required. Because I know when I was searching for it originally, I was pulling your papers and extracts from them and sending them to physios, you know, trying to say that this is what you can do. So you would be able to do that much more eloquently than we can. But I have seen with my husband the benefit of exercise, just like Eoghan mentioned as well. So I think the more that we can educate the people who we're working with, it would just be better for everybody. So thank you for sharing it. I'm so happy you're doing all of this research, and I just think the more we can get it out there, the better.
Thank you. Yeah, and I can share afterwards my website podcasts.
Perfect.
And you can read it, listen to it yourself, or give it to your therapist, physicians. And my colleagues in the Amsterdam University Medical Center we developed together a working book to build up your cycling exercises with guidance. And that's something that physical therapists in the Netherlands use a lot. So I can also share that information.
Yeah, thank you so much.
That sounds fantastic, Nicole. Thank you, Una. That sounds fantastic, Nicole. And that idea that also that MDI can look at how we can disseminate that and get it out to practitioners across Ireland, and maybe also look at the colleges and looking at how can we, you know, work collaboratively to support practitioners to have the understanding and awareness from your body of work. That sounds really constructive. Thank you very much. Does anybody else have a question? Because if not, first of all, thank you so much, Nicole, for an absolutely.
I tried to raise here my hand, but I do not. Nicole, many thanks for your presentation.
You're welcome.
Ja, heel goed. Okay.
Thank you. Dankjewel.
Thank you, Jean-Michel.
Listen. Yeah, it's a start, eh? You managed to give a good overview. You presented it in a pedagogical way. You gave definitions. You made sensitive distinctions between elements. So it alerted us to something, you know? Something what we have in common. After that a disease is detected, what is a hell of a lot of times not easy, and what a hell of a lot of times takes years and years and years for some. Once a disease is detected, you know, to go to the remedies or say to the possible lindering of the effects, this fatigue element, the fatigue accumulation you spoke about, the fatigue, acute fatigue you spoke about, the side effects, the adverse effects, so important, you know? And I would say, Nicole, if you allow me to say that, the most important is, for all of us and for you, it is not to give up, but to continue this type of exchange where we can learn about, you know? I hear on my notes, okay, and I do the next steps.
Wonderful.
And, you know, when you go to a meeting, the issue is always, I met a few friends and I got new friends. You go to a meeting, I learned a lot, knew a lot, but I learned a few new things. That it is what it is all about. And we should have a mechanism how we can continue these dynamics. Yeah, what in the Netherlands is easier, allow me to say that I open a bracket, than over here. Now, you made reference, Nicole, to your the development in the cars of the dashboard.
Yeah.
I give you a simple example. With the difficulty I have to close, you can see it here, my hand, just to keep the steering wheel, to get a knob on that steering wheel is not easy to whom to address to. Yeah? And how to get it. I just give you a practical example of life. In the Netherlands, it would be different. Now, having said so, you develop this watch here, the watch on muscle fatigue. That is bloody important, extremely important, so that we get an alert. We use technology, the available technology, the existing technology, plus we develop new technology in order to help human beings, to help ourselves, to prevent the bad. I give you an example. We don't know each other, but, I'm retired, okay. I travel a lot, in several consultative committees and so on and so forth, When you have a watch here, which should alarm someone that you fall, that you have fallen, this is limited to one country. So when I'm in Brussels, and I fall in Brussels, it is nothing.
Oh.
Yeah. Or when I go to Luxembourg, I fall over there, the watch is of no help. So simple things to develop watches which allow us to have this mobility in Europe, which is our right and what we benefit of, is of bloody importance. So that's the 112, not the 999. So 112. The 112 in all the countries of the European Union is accessible by the watches. And that here, the watches are not limited to one single area. To inform authorities about a fall, or to inform those who are close to yourself. Nicole, great stuff, hè?
Thank you for the example.
We moeten dat nog een keer maken, ja? Ik ben een beetje tweetalig. Ik heb daar 19 jaar in Brussel gewerkt. Hallo, beste vriend, hè? Ja, daar. Bedankt, hè?
Wonderful. It's a good example of making things personal, to personalize devices, watches for every country. Yeah.
Thank you. And that was a fantastic summary there, Jean-Michel. A fantastic breaking down of the fantastic qualities of Nicole's presentation. Oh, and you have a bit of a nugget of knowledge for us there about those watches. Are they specific to Ireland, the one you're mentioning? In the notes?
They have a GPS tracker in them.
Yeah.
So they follow you all around. You can get them through the public health nurse. Once you're over 65, you get them for free. And they detect falls, they ring your emergency contacts, emergency services, they phone back in on you. I think there's a monthly subscription, and but you can get them through the public health nurse, through the HSE system. I only found that out this year.
Thank you, Eoghan. That's very helpful. Again, it may relate to the jurisdiction of the Republic of Ireland only, but it still is very helpful to share that information.
Yeah.
I'm conscious of time now. We're just coming up to 12:31. Can I suggest that we come back at 12:45 so you've a chance to have a comfort break? Nicole, thank you again for a fantastic presentation, really rich knowledge, and just so much in it really to absorb, to try and take it all in, and a lot of life lessons in it overall. So thank you so much for for sharing such a valuable body of work with us all. Thank you sincerely, and for your time in doing so. We're now going to hear from two members of Muscular Dystrophy Ireland. Firstly, we're going to hear from David Kennedy, and then we're going to hear from Eoghan Curry. So I will introduce each of them in turn when they get to speak, and then I will suggest that we, after both of them speak, we then open the floor again for more questions and discussion. So firstly, I'd like to introduce David Kennedy. David's input is entitled "Living with FSHD, Leading with Strength." So David is a member of our advocacy committee, and he is based in Dublin. He's living with FSHD, and with living with FSHD, he brings lived personal experience to his advocacy efforts. He's passionate about raising awareness, fostering inclusion, and empowering others through shared stories and community engagement. And he says, "My FSHD diagnosis has given me a renewed sense of purpose to advocate, connect, and inspire others facing similar challenges." So we would like to welcome David now to speak with us. Thank you, David.
Thanks very much, Maeve. Yeah, so as Maeve said, Dave Kennedy, I live in Turtlestown in Dublin. I was diagnosed with FSH around 3 years ago. I actually went to the GP because I've no taste or smell for several years. So this is before even COVID. And when I finished talking to the GP around the taste and smell and the actions we were going to take on that, I mentioned about my right leg, that the calf muscle, I basically don't have one, and I haven't been able to run in a number of years. So he was a bit taken back by that and surprised that wasn't the number one reason that I was sitting down with him. So anyway, I told him I went to a number of physios, anatomy and motion people, and the GP said, "Okay, I'll send you to a neurologist out in Beaumont Hospital." So a number of months later, an appointment with Dr. Lefter out in Beaumont, and I think she obviously, when she seen me walking towards her, she knew there was something. The way I walked, I threw out my right leg. But anyway, when I went into Dr. Lefter, sat down with her, she started asking me a lot of questions, and she zoomed in and focused on my father, who for the last number of years, he was bent over and he was bedridden in the 70s before he moved into a nursing home, and when my mother couldn't look after him anymore. Then she asked me to, Dr. Lefter asked me to strip off. She straight away, when I stripped off, she said, "I think I know what you have, Mr. Kennedy, but we'll go through some exercises, blow out your cheeks, close your eyes, and then a number of lift your arms and sit up and lie down and all this stuff." So once I done that, she said, "Look at Mr. Kennedy," and she explained to me that she feels I have FSH, muscular dystrophy. She said, "We'll send the bloods off to confirm that, but that's what she's nearly sure I have." And she explained to me at a very high level what FSH was. So she asked me, am I a bit shocked by hearing this news? And I said, well, the overriding emotion is one of relief, to be honest with you. And that's genuinely the way I felt, because with the job, I had a kind of sedentary lifestyle for 20 years. So sitting down an awful lot, customer service, that's the job I still do. So you're sitting down all day, and I just felt a lot of it was down to laziness with the leg and stuff like this. So I was doing some gym work, but as one of the people said, I don't think it done me any good, the actual exercises I was doing and stretching, etc. So anyway, doctor left her. She said the next time you'll see me will be in the public forum that I hold, I think once every few months. So a few months later, when the blood, she said the bloods will take a long while because you're sending them off through the public system. So 2 or 3 months later, it could have been a bit more, I met Dr. Lefter in Beaumont Hospital, and she confirmed the diagnosis of FSH. So we had a chat. She set me up for a number of different tests and different people to see within Beaumont, and that would happen over the coming year. Um, so we went through everything, and then I was leaving, and I still remember leaving Dr. Lefter. I was walking away, and I was going through the kind of the waiting area um, on the way out, and I remember clearly blowing out my cheeks and I'm on my own here. And just as it's to walk outside the waiting area, Dr. Lifton came after me and said, "Oh, apologies, Mr. Kennedy. Have you got some time, a few minutes? There's somebody I want you to meet." And it was a lady from MDI. I think her name is Sinead. So every time you go to Beaumont Hospital, you meet, I think it's nearly always Sinead that's there. And yeah, I met her. I signed up for Muscular District to be a member of MDI, and it was the best thing I ever done. And from blowing me cheeks out to thinking, "Whoa, I'm on my own here now," to kind of sort all this out. It was a bounce in my step. Not that I could bounce, but I felt a bounce in my step leaving Beaumont Hospital that day because I wasn't alone and there was support there. So even though in any crisis situation over the years, I always try to look at the opportunity rather than danger. This was a big deal. I knew it was going to be, and it wasn't really focused on myself. It was a focus on I have 3 kids, 2 girls and a boy. And I knew it was hereditary genetic thing, so I was thinking straight away how it may impact them potentially. My siblings, I had to let my siblings know, so I have 4 siblings. So it was more about everyone else rather than thinking of myself. And I think that kind of helps me rather than focus purely on myself. I was focusing on the impact it potentially had on others. But just on MDI, so obviously then last year there was a national conference. I asked my daughter to come instead of my wife, but my wife ended up wanting to come with me, which I was delighted with because I didn't want to force that on her, but she wanted to know more and wanted to learn. And there's another national conference being held, I think it's this year, the 7th of December in Croke Park. And I would recommend everyone to go to that. It's fantastic. There's a lot of different information stands. I remember Dr. Jeff Preston, I believe he's going to be there again. So that was a huge benefit, not just for me, for the wife, and we came back and informed the kids, etc. So that was huge. Another couple of things that MDI have helped me out with. And my right leg, the drop foot has got progressively worse so over the last couple of years. So I can't drive a manual car. I had to change from a manual to an automatic and a left-footed automatic because my left foot comes up and down, my right foot doesn't. And again, MDI supporting me through that car adoption through the Ollie Hickey Fund, which was huge for us in the family. And I know, I think Joe Byron from Seal Blue is on here, and for 12 weeks I had a physio, and he came out to the job, Kieran, and gave me a list of exercises that I now do every day or every second day in regards to helping with the areas I'm weakest in. So I don't have the facial end of things. I do have it in the scapula. I had that from a very young age. I remember climbing when I was younger, walls or roofs, school roofs. I always struggled to do that, while kids half my size would be able to do it. So scapula was always one area that I was weak on, and then the legs is the other, and the core. So they're the areas care on the physio helped me. And I have now a list of exercises that I do every day or every second day. So yeah, it's all about looking at the positives, I try to be very grateful for what I have. Like anything, that can be hard some days, but overall, yeah, I look at things positive. Like, lucky enough, I live right beside the National Aquatic Centre, and I go swimming 4 to 5 days a week, and I find that to be huge, the swimming and the things, and that's something that I actually enjoy doing. So it's not a chore or anything like that. I actually find great, not just physically, mentally, it's fantastic. So yeah, that's my story, and yeah, onwards and upwards, and just trying to, whatever it throws at me, or as I regress, I'll always try to look at the kind of opportunity rather than danger. So that's it, Maeve. I'll take any questions if there's any, or you can move on to Owen.
David, thank you so much for sharing your diagnosis journey and also your journey of finding supports that work for you as well, which is really interesting and helpful, I think. I'm wondering, I think what we might do is go ahead and have both of you speak and then bring the questions and discussions
Yeah,
together,
perfect.
if that's okay. I think it might work well. So thank you
Yeah.
so much. And if anybody has questions for David, please do hold on to them, and we'll come back around after Eoghan has shared his experience and thoughts on it all. So thank you so much, David.
Thanks, Maeve.
Thank you. And now we're over to Eoghan. So before Eoghan starts, I'd just like to say a few words about Eoghan. So his input is going to be entitled Facing Struggles, Honouring Differences, as we said, FSHD. And Eoghan is 43 years old, and at 29 was the first person to be diagnosed with FSHD type 2 in Ireland. And what he says is, encourage us. Please don't wrap us in cotton wool. We're adaptive, creative, and resourceful problem solvers. The challenges we face give us the superpowers of empathy and social awareness of others in similar situations. So again, it's that thing of what you do with what you've been dealt, really, isn't it? Which is a thread running through, I think, from Nicole's input earlier as well. So we welcome Eoghan. On you go, Eoghan. Thank you very much.
How you doing, everyone? Thank you very much. And David, thanks very much for your story as well. Mine's slightly a bit different. Because basically I used to break a lot of bones, tear ligaments and stuff like that as a kid. And was always injured, fatigued, but I had a very eventful childhood. I did everything I wanted, and I was lucky enough because people who know me and know my mother would know she would have wrapped me in cotton wool, and I would never have been or achieved what I did do in my career. So I probably, a bit about me, I'm an ex-car salesman who probably went about with the condition the whole wrong career path. Started as a valeter, went on to merchandising for Mars and Snickers, so lifting heavy boxes onto high shelves, climbing up things, down like that, and then into car sales. But anyway, so basically I got diagnosed. I came back from Australia 2009. My left shoulder had gone, my right shoulder had gone probably when I was about 19, and went into meet a shoulder specialist who referred me to a neurologist. It was Ronan Walsh in the Hermitage Clinic, who knew I had it but couldn't diagnose me because I'm type 2, which is 5% of us. We're 5% who fly under all genetic testing. So I felt like a guinea pig for the first couple of years, going through electronic nerve conduction tests, the blood tests, the biopsies, things like that. But anyway, I just want to thank you all for giving me the time and the space to share my story. So living with the FSHD type 2 was not something I kind of ever planned for, but it shaped my life, my resilience, my perspective in ways I can never have imagined. Today, I just want to speak honestly about the struggles and differences, and hope that because this condition is bringing many challenges, there's also taught me powerful lessons about strength, adaptation, and community. I started noticing signs of the FSHD when my body started refusing to do things that it should. Tasks that seem simple, like lifting, reaching, climbing stairs, or like David mentioned, when young fellas trying to hop walls, get on to the roofs of school buildings. We could only do it if there was a bit of adrenaline. The only times we could hop walls if we were getting chased or something like that as kids. It did increase difficulties keeping up pace socially, and then obviously fatigue during my early teenage years. One of the biggest turning points for me was having the scapular fixation. My shoulders had weakened so much that raising my arms was pretty much impossible above my shoulder. Deciding the surgery was frightening. Would it help? Would it limit me? And even more, could I handle the recovery? Being the first person in Ireland to have it done with the new fixation way instead of using the pins and rods, yeah, it was a bit daunting, to say the least. Surgery itself was very hard, but the recovery was even harder. The pain was relentless. I had relied on oxy to get through those first few months of recovery. It dulled all the pain and also dulled me. Oxy didn't take away the hurt. It took away my clarity, my energy, and in some ways my sense of self. I tried to stop the withdrawal, hit force, sweats, anxiety, relentless fear. That period was the darkest part of my journey, but it wasn't only recovering from the surgery. I was fighting to reclaim myself from medication dependence. It's only determined support to push through. Even went into hospital for 13 weeks to go through all of this detox, everything like that. Every day off oxy felt like I was winning back a piece myself. I finally cleared that fog. I felt stronger, not because I was free from struggle, but because I had walked through it with a lot of help from individuals, with family, friends, MDI, so like living with FSHD is facing struggles, sometimes daily, sometimes hourly, weakness, fatigue, unpredictably how my body will respond. It affects only the physical, it only affects not the physical side, but the emotional and the social side. It's not easy to explain to others why I can't just push through, or why I need to rest more, or why I move differently. What I've learned is struggles are not signs of failure. Struggles are proof that we are still moving forward, fighting, living, adapting. Each time I adapt, each time I ask for help, which as Irish males, I know we find the hardest thing to do. And the more you ask, people will say no, but eventually it's just, you just have to keep asking until they've finally realised and say yes. Each time I rise again after falling, I am redefining different versions of strength that I never knew I had. The differences about my FSHD has taught me how to show more empathy, especially in my trade where I sell cars to people. I can sell cars to older people, younger people, people walking in with different roads of life. Like David, he says, you have a walk. I got told I rock a strut. I think it's mainly broken bits and just the way my body operates and compensation. Using adaptive tools, brilliant. They're so essential to us, but it's getting the right ones that fit for you and the ones that work for you. Everybody is different, so different things work for different people. It's just, even choosing surgeries are not signs of weakness, they're signs of courage. Just even honoring the differences between what makes us unique instead of hiding it. It means challenging ableism, and advocating for accessibility. It means recognizing that everyone, I don't like this word disabled, I like the word differently abled or not, carries invisible battles. Living with FSHD has given me deep empathy around me, and I see the differences as something that strengthens communities rather than divides them. It also makes you more kind of aware of your surroundings. Like you're walking down the road, you have to watch every footstep. It's a mental battle, every single step, because you are watching physically where you're going. It's not easy living with this condition, especially I've been lucky enough to kind of travel to a couple of conferences between Newcastle, Sir John Walton's University in Newcastle, go to the international conference in Amsterdam this year, which I recommend anybody get involved. You learn so much compared to what I have learned through the Irish medical system and the UK and the international medical system. It's like a third world country we live in here. Every advice I get is not what from the Irish doctors is not what I get when I go to these other places that have the centres of excellence. I've registered with, I was lucky enough, my diagnoses were done in the UK, so I was always heavily involved with Muscular Dystrophy Ireland and the FSHD Society in the UK. And I just want to say thanks for everyone. I know you're not alone here. But all those trips gave me a better sense of community of where I felt belong. Because I know as David, like I met Eoghan in Amsterdam with my mum. David, I've met you once or twice, but like I've never met any. First time in Amsterdam was when I sat down with people from Ireland that had actually got the condition. I felt sense of community and family and belonging. I just hope that we can build more awareness, triumphs, and try and just get more acceptance and make changes for the whole community, not just FSHD, but muscular dystrophy in general, because much awareness and support is needed around the condition in general. And just say my difference is I'm retired, got retired at 37. I slipped on oil, went 3 feet in the air and landed on the shoulder. So I suffer with chronic pain, fatigue, all of that side of things now. But that's not a result of my FSHD. It's a result of an accident that couldn't have been prevented. So my journey has been different, but I just want to explain that my pain is not from the FSD as such. It's more due to injury from an accident. So I'm always available. I love to help out, and with loads of bits and pieces lying around house and knowledge. And I actually featured in a magazine, a Finnish magazine, after the FSHD Connect Europe. I can give you a link to it, but it's all in Finnish, so you'll have to throw it to translate. And yeah, open for any questions. And thanks very much.
Eoghan, thank you so much for sharing all of that. A very, that just to really acknowledge sharing a lot of very personal challenges and the solutions you are finding in relation to meeting those challenges. Thank you so much. And as you said, like the objective of MDI and of this event is that people do get the message you are not alone, and hopefully we can see this as an opportunity to build the FSHD community connection. So thank you so much. So do people have questions for David and Eoghan, or comments or observations? Please do. So if anyone would like to put up a hand. So Alan wishes to speak.
Thank you, Eoghan and David. They're very detailed and I suppose inspiring stories. And really, I suppose, humbling to a great degree. Just, I suppose, a more practical question, David, and I'm just looking to get a sense. I suppose how, from an employment perspective, how your employer reacted and supported or not supported. I think it's an area, I suppose, where delving into as an organisation in relation to how we can support our members in the employment space, and how that, I suppose, through assistive technology and other accommodation, that actually, working full time or part time but continuing to work is actually, a real possibility. And I'd just like to get a sense, was the employer on that journey with you, or was it a challenge?
Yeah, thanks, Alan. No, it wasn't a challenge. As I said, I'm in that company now 20 years. So lucky enough with a very good relationship with my manager, who has since retired. But practical things like obviously when I got the diagnosis and I was informed that swimming was something that was very beneficial. And National Aquatic Centre is right beside me. Now that's not a cheap membership, so that was, I think it's over €600. But for example, the company pay that membership for me, which is a huge support. In regards to the kind of the car when I needed the car. I get a car allowance. So these are things probably you wouldn't get in most jobs. I've been very, very lucky. So that's just kind of monetary things that they've helped me with. And then when you're in the office, I have an office within the site. The table moves up and down, so I can stand up. I have a kind of a ball that I can switch between sitting on the chair and the ball. I have a mat where I can do exercises based on what Kieran went through with me through Seal Blue, that again MDI provided. So between MDI and the job, I've been very, very lucky. And kind of I have that office, like there's 50 or 60 people in that office, but since COVID, I think like work from home, they are trying to get us back in the office, but I think that horse is bolted. I'm sitting at the moment at home now on the kitchen table, so it suits me with what I have to be in the office. So the office is set up for me. We're in the home in Tyrrellstown, 3 bed. The wife can't even get in behind me to put anything in the bin here. So it makes sense for me to be in the office. And the job have been very good. Between the job and MDI, like as I said, Seal Blue, I now have, as well as the swimming, these exercises that will help me maintain the muscles I have for as long as I can, I suppose. So it's the job have been very good, and obviously MDI have been very good. I'm not sure if I was new in the company whether they'd even, I think I've been very lucky just where I am, how long I've been in the company, my manager, etc. So yeah, I couldn't say anything negative in regards to the company and what they provided me. Although if they hadn't got kind of my experience and knowledge, I'm not sure if they'd be that supportive. Maybe they would to anyone, but I just feel very lucky and privileged to continue to receive the support I am getting in helping me maintain the muscles that I have, albeit they are regressing, as I said, the drop, etc. So, hope that answered the question. Now.
Yeah, no, David, thank you very much. Look at the space. Look, that I think it's going to be a big challenge for us going forward. I mean, and it's great that an employer like that, I suppose, support. Yeah. Sometimes I think it's the champions within the employment scene, or your employer, like you said, your boss. You know, once you have a champion there, it makes it a little bit easier.
Absolutely, yeah.
No.
Absolutely, Alan. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you, David and Alan. Anybody else like to make a comment or ask a question of either David or Eoghan? Oh, we have Una McCourt who would like to speak. And then we have Jean-Michel.
Guys, thanks for sharing your stories. It was great to hear them. One of the questions, and I know earlier Nicole covered the whole exercise side of it, and you both mentioned that as well. But I'm just wondering, you know, with your other kind of holistic looking after yourselves, are either of you taking any supplements or vitamins or proteins or, you know, any type of antioxidants or anything that will help the condition from that side of the nutrition, or, you know, that side of, are you looking at it from that perspective at all?
Would one of you like to respond to that? Thank you, Una.
Yeah, well, I'll jump in first. So no, I'm not taking anything other than they call them energy tablets every day. I can't think of the name of them, but vitamins, some type of vitamin tablets. No, so just what I focus on is just the swimming and the exercises that I've got from the physio from Seal Blue. That's all I'm doing. You know, I'm not taking any supplements. I'm not aware of, and I haven't been advised to take any, so I haven't really looked into that myself on the net. Yeah.
Thank you, David. Eoghan, did you wish to respond to that also?
Yeah, like so when I got back after the operation and training and stuff like that, I changed up my whole diet. So I was using a natural pea protein with a vanilla flavor to give it a bit of taste, and then spirulina but I was also just drinking a lot of green vegetables as well, in a big juice, bit of water. That was good for replenishing, because you need to know the good fats that help build up these things with that. I also do a lot of massage therapy, dry needling as well, if you like a bit of pain. It does hurt. At the minute, my regime has changed after the accident. So I'm on a lot of kind of heavy sedating medication, stuff like that. So I can only do basic bits. But even walking, getting up and down the road, like that's the best form of resistance training. Or David, you mentioned the pill. Like when I had to learn to use my arm again, hydrotherapy. And I think you can avail of like 6 free sessions through the HSC. And that was going back to 2011-ish, 2012. So there is things like out there, and you can get hydrotherapy in the swimming pool. I'd recommend that, because you're working at your own rate, and you can get a good physio who knows like the neuromuscular stuff. I've got one who's private, but yeah, he just basically folds me in half and makes me feel better.
Well described.
That helps.
And I think, sorry, Sheila, you might have put your hand up, and Pauline, I don't know, was that in response to Una's question as well?
Yeah, sorry.
Yes, yes, it was.
Just to say that I was advised to take vitamin D. I think it's
Exactly.
D3.
Yes. And quite high doses of it usually, because I think vitamin D is so important for muscles.
Yeah.
And so I think there actually are a few papers out there published on supplementation with respect to FSHD. And even, looking at it from the whole perspective of building muscle and so on, I know that there are populations of people and groups in the States where they're doing protein supplementation, creatine, everything that they can do to build muscle, to support it as much as one can. So I just think it's another interesting area for people to start looking at. And I am members of FSHD groups, Facebook groups, where people share this information, and I'm happy to share those groups with other people if they want to join. But it is essentially the community with some kind of people who have quite an expert level themselves of understanding, pulling the information together and sharing it. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, Sheila.
Eoghan, did you wish to say something there?
Yeah, sorry, just something that I forgot to mention while I was there. When I was in Newcastle there last month, there is a guy I met there who moved up from London. He's putting together a list of vitamins and supplements like that. I have his contact details. He's still working. It's not definitive. He's still a work in progress. So there is something coming down the line that I do know aware of. There is a guy working in Newcastle on something like that.
Yeah. And I'll put it in the chat, the group that I'm a member of, but there's a lot of that information out there already, but it's great when you've got people pulling it together for others to share. So I can share what I do have.
That's great. Thank you both very much. We'll go to Jean-Michel now. Jean-Michel, do you have a question or a comment?
Many thanks for your two personal presentations, I have to say, I learned again. So it is to say, I don't stop learning. It is to say, I learned about this Amsterdam conference. Now, for me, the issue is a little bit, get the title of the conference or get the link to the results, conclusions of the conference. So do homework, and then maybe develop questions and discuss it with consequent people. I take for myself as well the point that we have to watch every step when we walk. There is no doubt on that. We have to adapt ourselves to the new realities which we have. I tell you that the other day, I have a rollator now since May. I fell with the rollator, So You understand what I mean? We have to watch every step we walk. Now about the information. It was very interesting when you said a Finnish website or Finnish study conclusion. We have to use the possibilities at our means. Google Translate, for instance, so to translate for ourselves documents or conclusions from conferences about the topic in questions, but a language which we don't master, Now, and I ask myself whether among ourselves here, this I don't know whether it's the beginning or where we are. It's the first time, at least, that I am in, and I feel very much strengthened. Dr. Lefter, she pushed me to be a part of it. Whether among ourselves we should not establish a type of a Facebook type of meeting group. I have to say that, for instance, the German Association of Inclusion Body Myositis, what I have, I know that we speak about something else today, I know that. But, they have a Facebook and the exchanges are just extraordinary on it. Obviously it's a bigger size, a bigger country, there are more people and so on and so forth. I know that, but it is just extraordinary. To mention just now, and unfortunately we couldn't go, but otherwise we would have done that, my wife and myself. My wife got a new right knee, so we couldn't make it, but in Düsseldorf, in Germany, at the end of September, around the 20th of September, every year is the biggest exhibition about rehabilitation tools, instruments which you may have for your condition. And I had been there years ago, and I can say it's very, very, very interesting. And you get visually speaking, you get to see instruments which can be useful for you and experimenting. It is a type of a gigantic showroom, with all the most modern elements which exist. So long it was just a contribution by myself, but I feel reconforted with what I have heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean-Michel, very much for sharing that. Does anybody else wish to say something? Well, again, thank you both, David and Eoghan, for sharing your experiences and your thoughts on all of this, and for the rest of you for your engagement with it. There is one more comment there. Just wanted to check. Yeah, so we've had quite a few resources shared on the chat, and we'll do our best to send them on to you following the event in case you don't get to catch them on Zoom, because sometimes it takes a bit of wherewithal to do that on Zoom as well. So thank you very much. So now we're going to go on to hear from Sheila Hawkins. So before we do, I'll just say a few words about Sheila. Sheila has worked in charities and the National Health Service in the UK, mostly in workforce development and transformation. After retiring in 2021, she studied for a foundation degree in fashion and footwear design, and is particularly interested in clothes that can be worn in a wheelchair. She was diagnosed with FSHD in 1989 and has been a member of Muscular Dystrophy UK for over 20 years. She has been, as she mentioned, involved in FSHD Europe since 2018 and has been president of FSHD Europe since 2022. So Sheila is going to speak with us about FSHD Europe, the European voice for people with FSHD. Thank you so much, Sheila.
Thank you. Right, I just have to get myself sort out this screen sharing. That's always the
Take
challenge.
your
So
time.
just bear with me. And just bear with me. I practiced this earlier and didn't quite get it right. There you go. So
Bingo.
yes. So FSHD Europe, it's an umbrella organisation. It was founded by patients in 2010, and it's based as a charity in the Netherlands. And this is our meeting about this time last year, and you can see Alan was one of the attendees. So Muscular Dystrophy Ireland has subsequently become a member of FSHD Europe. And our aim is to be a united, consistent patient voice for FSHD in Europe. And that's to improve the quality of life for all patients and their families and facilitate diagnosis and enable everyone to have access to the best treatment. So, what Nicole was talking about in terms of knowing your strengths, knowing how to work to your strengths is part of that. But I'm going to talk a bit about drug development later. And there's information as to our website here, and I've put a link to the European conference in the chat as well. So I'm just going to move this bar. Right. So FSH Europe as a region, 10% of the world's population. There's a prevalence rate for FSH of 12 per 100,000. I just worked out in the lunch break that that's probably about 650 patients in Ireland. 44 countries, of whom 27, but not the UK, are part of the EU, and 200 languages. So very varied, very mixed kind of continent, lots of different experiences, and countries in different stages of development. With me. Will it go down? Next slide. No. I've done something to the screen and I can't move it. Yes. So difference between Europe and other parts of the world. Essentially, we've got quite strict guidelines for clinical trials. Our processes for approving drugs and patient access are quite stringent. So generally, drugs are approved across Europe through the European Medicine Agency, but then the process by which people get paid is usually done in each country. And I mean, makes sense to me, but I know some people from elsewhere say why. Across Europe, we tend to have socialized medicine in the sense that it's not, if it's not completely free at the point of provision, it's fairly cheap, and it's provided on some kind of national process. And I know we all have opinions about how it could be improved, but it's that's the way it is. We have a number of supporting organisations, but one of the things we need to think about is research for a condition like FSH is global, but we need to think about trials that are local within Europe. There are loads of different European organisations across the bottom who are concerned with having a European approach to muscle conditions and improving them. And so there's lots of, we need to kind of be aware of that and work in that way. FSHD Europe is the charity, as I say, registered in the Netherlands, but linked to that is European Trial Network, which is a collaboration of researchers and clinicians across Europe. And we work hand in hand because, in a sense, we're both looking for the same thing, which is a treatment and a cure for FSH and how we improve the quality of life for people with FSH. So FSH Europe is made up of patient advocacy organisations, which are usually part of national patient groups such as your own. We're a member of the neuromuscular rare disease networks because, again, think global, think regional, get involved together, we're all stronger. and the European Health and the European Trial Network, who are like the healthcare providers, researchers, and the clinical trial sites. And I'll come on to that later. We have a number of other partners, such as the pharmaceutical industry, the regulators, health technology assessment, the process by which it's decided whether patients will get a particular treatment or condition. So in the UK, we have the National Institute for Clinical Excellence. In Germany, I think it's insurance companies. So there are different arrangements in each country. So we need to recognise where there's a European approach and recognise where there's a national approach and make sure that we make use of both. So moving on, member organisations. Yes, so we have 14 organisations, members at the moment in 12 different countries. And you'll see number 9 is Muscular Dystrophy Ireland. In the UK, we have Muscular Dystrophy UK, which is a general organisation like Muscular Dystrophy Ireland. And we also have FSH UK, which is very concerned with finding a treatment for FSH. That's its primary purpose. So, but as you can see, a good spread. We are looking to expand. We are hoping to have more members in Central Europe in the next year. We know that there's a proposal that Portugal may join us. We've been talking to people in Greece. So there's lots of potential to develop, and obviously the more member organisations we have, the louder the voice we have. And yes, so Eoghan was talking about the European Patient Conference in Amsterdam in June, and here's some photos from it. I'm just looking to see, can I see a photo of Eoghan or Eoghan, but I don't think I can. I'm sure, I know we've got some later. But yeah, I think we had 200 people there, of whom more than 100 were people living with FSHD. And the others were there, carers, family members, and the presenters, researchers, academics. So a really good mix. And I think if you get the opportunity to go, there'll be another one in 2 years' time, go for it. We think it's a great opportunity for patients to come together. So the European Trial Network, and it's a network rather than an organisation, but what it does, it's about supporting collaboration to improve clinical trials across Europe. It's chaired by Professor Nicole Voet, who Nicole Voet referred to earlier. They work closely together, and she's a neurologist in the Netherlands. And they have at the moment 5 working groups who are really looking to standardise and work together to have best possible practice across Europe. So the Clinical and Genetic Diagnosis Group, which is led by Richard Lemmers and Emilio Giardini, have done a lot of work in the last 2 or 3 years to standardise the whole process of genetic diagnosis. I naively assumed that it was a bit like a COVID test. You put some kind of bodily fluid onto something, and within 10 minutes you had a pink line that said yes or no. But actually what they do is they take a blood sample, they take it to the lab, and they grow it for a while, and then look at various things, and then on the balance of probabilities conclude what kind of FSH you have. And this is now done in the same way across Europe. So I think most Irish diagnostics go to a UK hospital in Bristol, but that's using the same kind of process to test across several different countries, which means a much more standardized approach, which means when it comes to treatment, it's everything's just more accurate and more chance that you get what's right for you. There are other groups on clinical outcome measures. That's like, what do we measure by improvement? What does the patient see as an improvement? What can be measured by a clinician? The biomarkers is the really technical one. So what are the things in the blood or elsewhere that can show whether there's improvement or not? They're also looking at clinical imaging outcome measures. So that's having MRI scans and how they can measure what's going on, and pediatrics, obviously working with younger people who are diagnosed with FSH. I'm not a scientist, so I'm talking as this from a very much a lay perspective. So, and they work with various European bodies such as European Neuromuscular Network, and they're also working with a care and trials site registry, where the intention is to produce a registry of potential clinical trial sites across Europe. Because at the moment the drugs companies tend to work with the research centres that they know. What we want to do is to spread those trials more widely, because that means we get more patients and more clinicians involved in research and potentially a faster result. So, oh, and here's some more photos. Yeah, they have run a whole series of sort of educational programs for scientists and to share and improve understanding and learning between scientists. So here's some of those events which have taken place, and they've had patient involvement in those. So this one on the top left with myself and Maria sitting next to me, they're very interested in the patient perspective about taking part in clinical trials. So it's very much a collaborative approach between the researchers and patients. So the drug development process, again, I'm not going to talk about it in great deal, but there are a number of companies and laboratories that are working on potential treatments. And the way it works, that they test things in the lab, and then they go to and then they have stage 1 clinical trials where they test on healthy patients to test for, is it dangerous, is it healthy or not. And then they have trials where they test its efficiency. And at the moment, no company's got beyond phase 2, where they're testing, has this drug had an impact on patients with FSH. And it's quite hard to do because it's a progressive condition. So it might be that you're naturally in a stage where you're steady anyway. So how long do they keep on testing you? Is it for 6 months? Is it for 10 years to see what rate of deterioration is? And at the moment, any kind of treatment would probably slow the rate of deterioration rather than actually reverse it. So it's quite difficult to test. It's not like testing an antibiotic that quickly cures up an infection. And then they would move on to stage 3 trials, and once there had been proven to be significant results, they would look to approval, to be given to patients. And in the States, that would be the Federal Drug Agency. In Europe, it's the European Medicines Agency, and they would be looking at, is this drug safe and is it effective? And it would then move to the payer agency, which would be, and I don't know what it is in Ireland, that would then say, is this a drug that we can pay for? Does it represent value for money for taxpayers? Because obviously everyone wants to promote the drug for their particular condition. So in the UK, I know it's National Institute for Clinical Excellence. I know in Europe there are some countries working together to develop a joint approach to this, but I'm not quite sure where they are in that. Maybe someone from MDI Ireland could expand on that later. So, and yes, I'm not going to go into this a lot of detail, other than to say we know FSH is caused by genetic problems. Some of the treatments are looking to address the root causes. Others are looking to impact on the side effects further down. So it's really, do you look for a treatment that addresses the problems in the DNA, or do you look at treatments that implement further on? So different companies have taken different approaches to this. The problem we have, though, is, first of all, do we have drugs that are ready to be tried? But do we have drugs, do we have enough in place across, Europe or the world really to be able to run clinical trials? Do we have the right do we have the right clinicians? Do they have the right equipment? If the trial is going to require an MRI scan, do they have MRI scanners in place? Do they have therapists such as physiotherapists who can actually measure what's happening, as well as what's happening in terms of the biomarkers or blood samples? We also need to have patient involvement. We need to have patients ready to be who want to take part in trials, and we need to structure trials in such a way that patients are able to take part in them. I'll come on to that a bit later. And we then need, once a treatment has been found, do we have, do all patients have access to those therapies? And also, at the moment, we've had the experience, we'll have the experience where you're told, well, there's nothing we can do. Once the treatment becomes available, that's actually more demanding on the health service. So is your health service ready to provide trials, to provide a treatment? Because instead of seeing you once a year and saying, oh, well, that's the way you are, does that then mean that they're saying, well, you've got to come in every month for a blood test, and we've got to be monitoring the effect on your kidneys or something like that? That's much more, there's a work for the health service in doing that. So FSH Europe's got 3 strategic pillars: patient advocacy and education, clinical trial readiness, drug approval and access, and underpinning all that is stakeholder engagement. So what we need to do is to and I suppose we have to separate between what's done at a national level, so what Muscular Dystrophy Ireland does, and what we do as a European organisation. So first of all, we want to help patients to engage with the regulatory bodies such as European Medicines Agency and industry. We want to help them to contribute to study design outcomes, and we want to make sure that lived FSH experience is central to all activities. Very interesting. Recently met with one of the drugs companies who are, ready to go live on clinical trials. And there are about 6 scientists in the room who knew all about the DNA and, and the details of how that worked. And it became really clear to me that none of them really understood what it was like to live with FSH. And that's where we as patients are really important. So we've established a patient advisory council, and that would be a small group of patients who would work with an industry partner as they were developing trials, designing trials, to advise them on what would be useful, what would help, what might motivate people to take part, what would make it more difficult for people to take part. So an example, someone was telling me, not from our group at the moment, they were talking about how people would feel about wearing something like a Fitbit on their wrist to measure their activity and how strong their arms were. And wearing a Fitbit doesn't sound too bad to me anyway. But the patient said, well, given that FSH is an asymmetric condition, you're lopsided, do you want me to wear it on my good wrist or my bad wrist? And the clinicians hadn't thought about that at all, but actually, of course, it makes sense. Which bit of you are you measuring? So, patient advisory council, we run briefing sessions. We are both for patients. We're running webinars on the regulatory system. We conducted the European Patient Survey in 2023, I think, which I know quite a number of patients in Ireland responded to, and we're developing toolkits to help patients make the case when it comes to payers and other things. Clinical trial residents, as I said, we need to increase and coordinate the network of qualified trial sites across Europe, and we want to the vision really for the European Trial Network is that it acts as a kind of broker. So when a pharmaceutical company has a trial that they want to do, that they come to the European Trial Network, who says, well, the one in the Netherlands have been really busy, but we have a group in southern Italy who really want to run a trial, and they've got all the things you need to run that trial. So to spread the research around, as they spread the access to patients We need to, that they're looking on strengthening infrastructure and providing clinician training. They've done a number of webinars, both for specialists but also for generalists. I mean, people have talked about, the fact GPs don't recognise FSH, so working on that kind of thing to help them understand it. And we also need to increase and get patients registry get patients ready to join registries, contribute to biobanks, things like blood samples, and participate in trials. So all those are kind of things that will contribute to, when a drug is being trialed, that we're really ready and we can take that and run with that. And then when it comes to drug approval and access, we want to collaborate with the European Medicine Agency and anyone else to make sure that patient input is seen as important. If a treatment is shown to increase some count in your blood, but patients say, I don't actually feel any stronger for it, then really, is it worth taking, really? We need to develop patient journeys, so really help regulators and drugs companies understand the whole experience of living with FSH and the impact it has on people's lives. And some of that's things like burden of illness, and some of that might be economic burden of illness, as in the impact it has on your job. Are you able to continue to work? Have you had to take a less well-paid job? Are you paying extra for care? Those kind of things. All these things really kind of help both regulators and drug companies understand the impact of living with FSH, and thus why they should test that drug, approve that drug, and pay for that drug. And then we couldn't do any of this without stakeholder engagement, and some of that is really about getting you as patients involved in this sort of thing. So it is about collaboration. It's about taking part in events. We have things like the Connect meeting, the World FSH Day. There's talk about Project Mercury. There's also the World FSH Alliance, which is a global group of people, of patient organizations from across the world, which is coordinated by the American FSH Society. So there's lots of different ways where we really need to be involved and raise our voice. Just move on. So Project Mercury is a global project which is really led. It is about getting trials in place faster, and some of that is, FSH is seen as a rare disease, and people say, well, both the drugs companies and the regulators might say, well, it doesn't really affect many people, so why should we bother? There's no profit in the drugs companies. It's not affecting that many people. So the first thing is to really increase the number of people on registries. And it's about showing how many people there are with FSH. I understand that MD Ireland is just about to create a kind of registry of patients. And I would urge anyone to get onto that. Doesn't commit you to taking part in anything, but as a campaigning tool, it shows it's important to show how many people are affected by any particular condition, and that will help in drug development, but it also might help MD Ireland in some of their lobbying work within Ireland. So it's about putting your name on that list and being counted. So we need to maximise, show where people are. We need to increase the number of trial sites globally. So the European Trial Network's doing that. We need to increase people wanting to take part in clinical research. So again, registries is part of that, but also patient advisory councils, because it's making sure that trials are designed in a way that's easy for patients to take part. And it's also about collaboration between organizations, between patient groups, between scientists to really make the most of everything. So the European Patient Survey that we ran in 2003, in fact, there's now a collaboration of patient organizations in Latin America who are looking to do something similar. And it'd be very interesting to see if they come up with different answers as to what matters. So that kind of shared working is really important. And there are partners for Project Mercury all over the world. So as you can see, it's very much a global initiative. This is the South American group I was talking about, the World FSH Alliance. Australia is quite active in it, and there's some activity in India and China as well. So lots of different people involved in this. So very much a global issue. And they call it Project Mercury because it's about getting treatments to patients faster. So please, we're looking for people to get involved. We're particularly looking for volunteers and particularly for the Patient Advisory Council. As I said, that's a group of people, patients who are informed enough about the research and education processes to be able to advise on things like the design of clinical trials, but also other things that might be relevant where officials want to get a patient perspective. And we've done this by creating groups of maybe 8 patient volunteers from different European countries who will participate together and take part in online meetings with a quite a clear agenda to discuss a particular issue that the sponsors, such as the drugs companies, wants an answer to. And please, if you have any questions, very pleased. We're very keen to hear from you. If you're particularly interested, if you're a scientist or researcher and you're interested in the clinical trial network, then it's Nicole Voet's. If you want to talk about the patient experience, contact me. And if you want to see more about FSH Europe's activities, then I would say contact Ria, our chief exec, or look at our website here. So thank you for listening. Any questions? Stunned silence.
Sheila, if I could come in for a second to thank you so much for a fantastic presentation. Like I thought it was really clear and made it very understandable. You explained everything so well and gave such good examples of the role, the vitalness of the inclusion of people's experiences of living with FSHD in developing any treatments or therapies, etc. Meanwhile, and again, clearly with FSHD Europe, it's really good to see that you've identified what the challenge in a hopeful time for the development of treatments and therapies. In this hopeful time, you've identified the kinds of barriers that are there and how they can be overcome. So thank you, and we really welcome that. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So would anybody have comments and questions? I think Una has one, and Alan. So maybe Una first.
Yeah, Sheila, thank you. That was brilliant. And it's great to see all the organizations around the world pulling together and, trying to drive the clinical trials and so on. And I think just with respect to Ireland, it's rather difficult because our population is so small. And I know from speaking to consultants before, they were saying we won't have clinical trials for this in Ireland because our population is too small. So I don't know if the only way for people in Ireland to participate is would they have to travel, or does anybody ever think we'll actually be able to do it in Ireland? Because there are quite a few exciting treatments coming, or potential treatments coming down the line, and clinical trials, starting our work in progress. So I think, right now we're not in a position to participate, but just if anybody has any visibility on what that might look like in a longer term.
Well, I would say you have got the possibility to influence how trials are designed through things like the Patient Advisory Council. And you've got an advantage because those meetings are conducted in English. So Irish patients are able to participate. Yeah. The other thing, as I understand it, the European Medicine Agency will want to see medicines trialed in Europe. So just because something's been trialed in the US doesn't mean it'll be trialed in Europe. So although it's unlikely there'd be a trial in Ireland, the EMA process would cover Ireland,
Yeah.
and certainly the initial trials tend to be quite small numbers. But sometimes something like this, they might be looking for more people, and there might I don't know enough about the state of research community in Ireland, but there might come a time when there'd be some of the third level trials might take place in Ireland, or a longitudinal study or something like that. And there might be stuff like natural history studies, for example, that have been developed in Ireland that would contribute to the process. So just because there isn't an immediate trial in Ireland isn't a reason not to
Absolutely.
contribute to what's going on.
Yeah, thank you.
Interesting. There's some other work I'd seen, another completely different condition, but some patient testimonies, and a lot of which have been filmed in Ireland. And they were really good because they talked about the burden of living with the condition and living with a progressive condition and not knowing what the future holds. And they were very powerful. So, I mean, I don't think these patients were going to be involved in trial, but they helped get out the message as to why that was important.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Una, and thank you, Sheila. Alan, have you a question there or a comment?
Yeah, great presentation, Sheila. Less of a question, more of a comment. And I look at a testament to Una, who I suppose was involved when I got involved. I suppose leading the case on getting a registry for Ireland. And I fully agree. Look, the chances of a trial in Ireland are low, but I suppose it'll only increase by, I suppose, the work we're doing, and I suppose getting the registry up and running as one of the key components, and also that it can link, I suppose, with other registries across Europe and in the UK.
Yeah.
And I suppose just my comment then was just, I suppose I was going to ask Dimple if she wanted to just jump in and give people a sense and a feel where we are with the Irish registry.
Thanks, Alan. I was actually just going to comment, all right, on the registry, and also, Sheila, you mentioned around access to drugs in Ireland as well. So I can speak a little bit on that too. First of all, with the registry, yeah, so we're developing a registry. It's not going to be specific to FSH. It'll be for neuromuscular conditions. But it is designed in a way that it will align with like the European Neuromuscular Disease Registry, and it's also taken into consideration Treat NMD's registries, which I know was listed there as well on one of your last slides. Where we're up to with it, we'll be starting our ethics process shortly. So I suppose just for people on the call, anticipating ethics can take quite a number of months in Ireland. It will potentially probably be mid next year, and that's just kind of given that extra bit of time, but there will be notifications and everything going up on our websites, and people will be emailed out. It will be a slight kind of rolled out phase because in Ireland you need to get ethics approval from each individual hospital. So if somebody is linked in with a hospital, then it'll be once ethics has been approved in your hospital, you'll be given an opportunity to enroll. But yeah, there's definitely a huge need, and I think just that kind of the understanding even around getting a bit more of knowledge around the amount of people, with FSH in Ireland. Where are they located? Have they had genetic testing? How is it impacting them? Like you mentioned, Sheila, it can just really help from a kind of an advocacy or raising awareness perspective, but then also can link into that kind of drive more for clinical trials, where we're able to say, well, actually we do have X amount of people here with FSH, and there is a potential that out of that, X and Y, will meet those eligibility criteria. So yeah, hopefully in the future, Ireland will definitely be up there as well. And I do think, I think clinical trials in Ireland as a whole, we probably do fall slightly behind other countries. But I do see the potential maybe for even maybe like a longitudinal study for FSH in the future. Just kind of, even linking in with some of the clinicians and kind of just on the ground, we're kind of hearing, some of the interest there as well. So I would hope that we would see something like that. That again will help us be a little bit more trial ready if the opportunity arises. And then just to speak a little bit around drug access. So as you mentioned, when a medication is approved at a European level, our national body then in Ireland is called the NCPE for short. I think it's the National Centre for Pharmacovigilance or something. It's a quite a long term, hence why it's shortened to NCPE. So the drug company would make an application through to our HSE, and the NCPE then are the ones that perform the health technology assessment on that. As part of that assessment process, though, there is an opportunity for the patient voice to be heard. So, MDI as an organisation, we will be notified if one of the conditions that we support, if they come up for a drug reimbursement assessment process, we're advised of it, and then we do reach out to the community for people who are impacted by that condition to gather those testimonials. As you mentioned, some of them can be extremely powerful, and kind of make sure that that patient voice is included alongside then all the scientific evidence as well. And then also that's kind of how it works majority of time. There is also a Benelux agreement. So that's kind of, again, at a European level where some countries come together to negotiate the prices and for and drug access as well. And that's particularly when it comes to some like orphan drugs. So that was Ireland participated in that for a gene therapy for SMA. So it can sometimes as well speed up that process a little bit when a couple of countries come together and negotiate on a price and access agreement. But yeah, just want to say thank you so much. It was really informative. And I think MDI, we're delighted to be involved now with FSHD Europe. Yeah, and just look forward to, the years ahead working alongside you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jimna. And thank you again. Actually, Eoghan would like to say something as well. Eoghan, would you like to come in there?
Oh, no, sorry, continue, May, first. I don't want to cut you off.
No, keep going.
Hi, first of all, hi, Sheila. Nice to meet
Hello,
you.
and
All right. No, it's just all the work that you do in Europe and in the UK is brilliant. And I've probably learned the most from those things. And I actually found I think the UK registry, when I involved with them, was around the first time I got diagnosed. But the access to like the overall physical assessments that you guys over there is unbelievable, as where they can gauge your walk through. Were you in Newcastle last year?
well, I would
No.
say that the services in the UK are also quite hit and miss. So if you go to Newcastle, it's great, but depending on, my local hospital isn't particularly interested in muscular dystrophy. So, we also have problems with postcode lotteries as well.
Yeah, it's because like over here it is like my last neurology thing is I met the registrar and she didn't even know what FSHD was.
Yeah, I've had that experience as well. So
Yeah, but I would just say like because that connects with the UK registry, and I know there is a clinic opening up north in Northern Ireland, isn't there? Something like that. Raj had mentioned something to me before where they were hoping to maybe with the European thing engage with the Irish patients that way to try and build up a bit more engagement.
What FSH Europe has very successfully done has increased the number of, is working on increasing FSH trial sites in the UK, because we don't really have enough trial sites for muscular dystrophy in the UK. We could probably have about 6, and there's only about 3 at the moment for any kind of MD. And FSH UK is definitely working on that and has succeeded in bringing trials to the UK. So yeah, that's what they've done. So I don't know the exact details of where everywhere that's in her sites, but yes.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Now just again, pleasure meeting and thanks for all your input as usual.
Thank you.
Would anybody else have a question or a comment for Sheila?
Alan, you've got your hand up there.
Yeah, I am sorry, one final question. Sheila, just I suppose it'd be nice to get a sense. I mean, you've been involved in MD UK, but also in FSHD in the UK, and I suppose was the different models of what they support, and maybe also just maybe to reflect on the numbers that are in the UK. I just want to get a sense across to the guys here on the call. how it differentiates, from a
Yeah.
small number of people in a small country. I mean, we're the size of Manchester, where
Yeah.
it's a lot bigger, and it has those two organizations to support it. How they both operate differently, and I suppose how you see probably some of the challenges we may overcome in that respect.
Yeah. Well, first of all, to say I'm a member of MD UK and have been for a long time, and that's in many ways similar to MD Ireland, as in it's an organisation that works across 60 different types of muscular dystrophy. And also, I think like MD Ireland started off as a group of parents of boys with Duchenne. That was its Muscular Dystrophy UK started in that way. And there's sometimes an argument that it's too focused on Duchenne and not enough on all the rare adult conditions. But yes, so Muscular Dystrophy UK will support research into lots of different conditions according to what money it's got, but then it provides general information, and it's got 4 pillars. So one is research, one is about getting the NHS and the state to deliver services, as in keeping them on their toes. And then the other one is living well with the condition now. So that's about participating in society. So all the stuff like helping people continue to work, access to leisure, the running work with the Department of Transport at the moment about installing changing places toilets in places like motorway service stations and railway stations. So help people get out and about, that sort of thing. So that's and they also have a big information line, so they deal with all sorts of queries about benefits and things like that. And they have quite a lobbying role in terms of influencing government. So that's Muscular Dystrophy UK. FSH UK is purely focused on FSH, and it's much more focused on a getting a cure or a treatment for FSH. So having clinical trials in Europe, working with clinicians, getting them together, having a UK-wide approach to FSH. So I think that's the difference, really. MD UK is much bigger, employs staff. FSH UK is a much smaller, newer organisation. And in fact, there's a similar model in France, as in there's AFM Telethon, which is concerned with lots of different conditions, and AMID FSH, which is more about a support group for people with FSH. So I think it's I mean, as a patient, I've always felt I've benefited from the kind of wider application of different conditions. So if we're talking about, wheelchair access or something, it doesn't really matter if you've got FSH or limb girdle or, because it's about wheelchair access and you want, whereas some people are very concerned, particularly with FSH. And I think that's the difference really, and where you see, do you want to really push for a treatment for FSH, or is it about living well with a muscular condition? And I think that's the difference. I think FSH UK and MD UK are working together quite harmoniously, but they have different priorities in that sense. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, that's perfect, Sheila. Yeah, I just want to give, because we operate differently here in Ireland, and I suppose give people a sense, some of the challenges, but also the opportunities and the different makeup. But again, UK and UK services, and you're, in a 2026 world, 2027, we're so close, and connectivity. So I think we've huge opportunities.
Something I was thinking, I suppose the issue in Ireland is because it's smaller, you have fewer hospitals, fewer clinicians, so it's easier to know everyone in the field in a way that you couldn't do in the UK, for example. So we have 44 acute hospitals in England, all of whom potentially see FSH patients. So the chances of them all doing it in the same way are much less. Whereas if you've got fewer, in theory, you could get them all to be singing from the same hymn sheet, delivering the similar service.
We focus on that, Sheila. That's a good angle, a good angle. Thank you so much. Does anybody else have a question or a comment, or otherwise we will go towards closing, finishing up the session with a few little bits? Okay, then. So just as we move towards finishing our event, first of all, I'd like to take a moment to thank you all for your participation and contributions. Your presence and engagement has made this occasion truly special and successful. I'd particularly like to extend our thanks to our fantastic speakers, Nicole, David, Eoghan, and Sheila, for your excellent talks and your generosity in sharing your experiences and your expertise and your energy and all of that. And it's a lot to offer to this group and this community. So we really appreciate that. I'd also like to say thank you to Dipna, who has been helping hugely with all the Zoom tech side of things, which I would certainly be lost without. Thank you, Dipna. So we really hope this event has provided you with some valuable insights and connections, and hopefully a sense of hope and encouragement, and that it will remind us of the importance of community and support in every journey, and of our purpose in MDI of wishing to support that. To finish up, before I invite you to say a word to finish up, I would like to just say we will follow up with the PowerPoint presentations, with some links that were shared, some resources, and also with a very short feedback form that we'd really appreciate if you would send back to us, because it helps us try and get it, every time, to try and improve and know what you want, so that we can try and meet your needs. So yeah, and the other thing is, it was mentioned earlier on, we will ask you in the email, do you wish to share your contact details if it's an email account? And if you do wish to, please let us know directly back by email, and we will then work to see if we can connect people in that way. But we would like your explicit consent on that in case people do wish to connect together. So to finish up, before I do just the very final finish up, I'd like to invite each of you to say maybe share one word of what you will take away with you from today's session. So, and again, I'm inviting you to do that. If you don't wish to do it, you can just say pass, and that's cool too. It's all about minding yourself. But meanwhile, from the top, I suppose I'm on first. So I will say what I will take away from it is just incredible commitment and talent brought together is powerful. So thank you all. That's more than one word, sorry. So Eoghan is next up. If you would like to share a word of what you will take away from today, Eoghan, please, or pass.
Sorry, yeah. No, again, it's just more 2 words: sense of community.
Thank you very much, Eoghan.
Yeah.
Thank you. And next up, we have Sheila on my presentation here.
FSH is a shared journey.
Thank you, Sheila. Dipna?
The one word that came to mind for me is support.
Thank you, Dipna. Alan?
Yeah, look, a great piece of work, guys, and really enjoyed it. Mine's more than words, so I'm gonna have to bear with me. Look, when we set this event up, we're looking to do it face to face, and the real thing is about, I suppose, getting that connection and getting people to us engage and build up those relations. I'm actually really impressed how it worked today, and maybe that's a testament to you, Maeve, and how you chaired it and brought it all together. So really came across that way, and I think it's been good connection. But you still can't beat that face to face, that connection piece. The conference is on the 7th of December. I think the majority of people from that potentially could attend, and maybe make your way to look for the people who are on this on today's event, and maybe connect up and say hello physically. So for me, look, yeah, really impressive. The stories were amazing, and gives us some grounding, on things we've done, the things we can do, and that family element, that we're all part of this journey together. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Alan. And over to Una McCourt.
Yeah, I'll try and keep it shorter than Alan. I think, you know, every time you go to something like this, you learn something new. So for me, information is power, and it's, you know, what can we do next and where can we go? So I'm learning all the time, and I think that's wonderful to be able to learn more and how can we push this in the right direction. So thank you for teaching me.
Thank you, Una. And now we're over to David.
Learnings, Maeve. So just through getting more informed like we did today, learnings is the word I take from it.
Thank you, David.
Yeah.
Pauline.
Thank you. And to say there may be few of us, but we're not alone.
Thank you very much, Pauline. Jean-Michel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Encouraging. First time, but certainly not last time.
Excellent. Thank you. Nicole.
Yeah, thank you so much. Although it was a small group, it was a very active and enthusiastic group. So happy to help in the future if you need any more information.
Thank you so much. Eoghan.
I went already, Maeve.
Oh, sorry, Eoghan. Please forgive me. I had thought that as I said it. But anyway,
Okay,
sorry about that.
getting late.
Richa?
Sorry, is that me? Sorry, I wasn't sure. Yeah, mutual collaboration or equal collaboration, I think was really important. But also thank you so much. Like, I'm so grateful to be here, like able to hear, because as someone who does a lot of like poetry and art to kind of cope with my own like life struggles, let's say, it was so important when Eoghan was like, yeah, it's your learnings, it's your humanity and your empathy that makes you an expert at your life, and you're trying to apply that. So for me, I think it was just, yeah, the interdisciplinariness, like everyone's an expert in their own right and they bring a lot to the table. So the collaboration was awesome, and just I learned a lot. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Richa. Sinead, please.
Thanks, Maeve. I think Una McCourt robbed one of my words there that I had was power. So the power of sharing knowledge and the power of experience and sharing that experience, because you know, it's people with the condition that have become the experts in the condition, you know, reluctantly or by default, and by fighting and looking for answers and not giving up. And I suppose it gives a voice to others who may feel a little bit more fatigued by their condition, may have, you know, mightn't be as strong an advocate for themselves. So by other people speaking and sharing their knowledge, I think that's power in itself.
Thank you, Sinead. Eoghan.
Yeah, for me, it would be learning and encouragement.
Thank you very much, Eoghan. Amanda.
I found it very informative, especially the personal stories. So thank you for sharing those. And thanks to yourself, Maeve and Dimna, for organising today. It was really good. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Please forgive me. Did everyone get to speak? Because the order of people appearing on my screen has kind of moved. Did everyone get to speak? Would anybody else like to say anything? I think we have everybody.
I think that's everyone, Maeve. Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you very much. So just to finish up, as mentioned, we will have our national conference in Croke Park on Sunday, the 7th of December. We'd really love to see you there. And as Alan mentioned, it's an opportunity for the FSHD gang to see one another in person. So we would really, really welcome you all. And we hope it will be another fantastic day of bringing the community together, the broader, neuromuscular and muscular dystrophy community together. So we really hope to see you there, and bookings will be going live very soon. So secondly, we look forward to continuing to supporting you in any way that we can to the best of our ability at MDI. So please don't be alone, and please do contact us. We will include our contact details in our email, follow-up email. And again, if you please do mind yourself and do avail of of emotional support that we offer if you're affected by anything that has come up for you during this discussion as well. Please do be aware of that. So I think that's everything. Thank you all so much. It's really lovely to meet you all. That's the thing about a community connection. It's really lovely to meet you all, and thank you everybody for taking part. Take care, everybody.